I could have done that, a story about an uninterruptible power supply. I'm one of the 1 or 2 techs at my company who covers 2 hardware regions. The first is my home location, and the second is well over an hour away. Naturally, when a proper hardware issue comes up in the secondary location, it's a real pain to coordinate a visit since we've been short-staffed for the last 8 months. The users at these distant locations don't ever seem to understand that I can't just drop everything to waste half a day to head out there and back unless something is on fire. I was enjoying a good stretch of time where I hadn't had any issues at the secondary region, so it was about time that something were to come up. It came in the form of a failing UPS unit, uninterruptible power supply, for the uninitiated. After speaking with both my supervisors and the hardware lead, we all agree that due to our current staffing condition, we would mail the UPS directly to the location, and I would walk them through switching the unit over the phone. I can already hear your collective groans, but do remember that this would essentially be me driving 1.5 hours one way to walk in and spend 5 minutes swapping the unit over before driving back. The company didn't want to reimburse me for the miles traveled, and they didn't want me away from my desk. I relay this to the location manager, who is immediately, I don't know how else to put this, terrified. He's not angry. He's not frustrated. He's afraid. As if the mere mention of doing anything remotely technical caused him absolute terror. He begins to almost plead that I drive out and do it myself, that nobody at the location has any idea how to do this. I assure him it isn't difficult, and as long as they follow my instructions, it will take 5 minutes max to square everything away. Note, I did mention this to my supers, who doubled down and said just do it over the phone anyway. I would have driven out if they gave me the green light, but they didn't. The manager reluctantly agrees but says he will not be there the morning this needs to happen, and that the senior user will make the swap instead. He gives me their cell number and we arrange a time first thing in the morning. I let the network team and admins know this location will be showing is down at this time and to ignore the alerts. I had an extra new UPS unit in my office, and it's a good thing I did, because this unit was slightly different in its setup than what I had used in the past. No, not more difficult to set up. It's much, much easier. No need to plug in a cable, you simply flip the battery over and plug it in. Keep this in mind. The next morning I call the senior user 5 minutes earlier than we had scheduled, and it's a good thing I did. Turns out, this user has gone rogue, and unplugged the old UPS unit well before I called, took the new one out of the box, and had been waiting for who knows how long, meaning the location had gone dark for that entire duration. I was a little horrified, but undaunted I started walking him through the instructions. Flip the unit on its side and remove the side/bottom panel. For some reason this took him a good 2 minutes. Finally it was off. Good, now pull the battery out, flip it over, and turn it around so the white arrows are pointing into the unit. The following silence began to last far too long and I got nervous. I asked, "How's it looking?" He says, "I'm peeling off the stickers." I see horror. No. I didn't say to do that. You need to put them back exactly how they were. There are arrows indicating the proper side we need to slide into the machine. A deep, deep sigh, followed by 2 more minutes of messing around. By some form of divine intervention he was able to get the stickers on right again. I said, "Okay, now put the battery green side up back into the UPS, the arrows show you which way to put it in." 2 minutes of silence. I ask if he's okay. "Yes," he says. Another minute. Another minute. Finally he says, "Okay, it's in." "Great," I say, "now put the cover panel back on." 5 minutes follow of him grunting and muttering until he goes, "It's not going back on." Confused, I ask him to send me a picture. To my utter horror he has somehow jammed the battery backwards into the machine, and got it stuck there. The bits of plastic that are used to guide the battery in and keep it straight are now off center, and causing the siding of the UPS to bow outward. To top it all off, you can clearly see the white arrows poking out from the siding backwards, with big block text saying "insert this way." "All right," I say, "it's in backwards. You need to get it out and turn it around." Another deep sigh from him, as if him screwing up is my doing. 7 minutes of the most miserable muttering I've ever heard from a human being follow, and then, why can't someone just come out here and do this? I think, because typically this is very hard to screw up this badly. I say nothing. A few moments later he is simply unable to get this battery out. I tell him, "All right, put the other UPS unit back the way it was." Thankfully this was the only thing he was able to do right, and the location came back online, while the UPS couldn't hold a battery on its own. When plugged in like this, it becomes a glorified surge protector, again, for the uninitiated. I ask if there's anyone else on location to help us. He says no, I'm the only one here. Which is strange because this location is due to open now in 15 minutes. I tell him we will think of another course of action and to leave everything as is. Before I hang up he says, "What about the keyboard?" "What keyboard?" "My keyboard." "What about your keyboard? Where do I plug it in?" "I'm not sure what you're talking about. I had to unplug my keyboard. How do I get it back in?" "You? What? The keyboard for your station?" "Yes." Don't ask me why this person unplugged his keyboard when his computer was nowhere near the UPS closet. I say, "You plug it into the USB port, the rectangle-looking one. There are ports in the front and the back." Another 5 minutes goes by, more muttering, more cursing from him. I try to talk to him as he seems to have me on speakerphone, but there's no answer. I call out to him several more times. Finally he says, "Can you hear me?" Turns out he thought speakerphone has an unlimited range, and was yelling at the phone a good distance away thinking I could hear him. I tell him keep the phone close and I'll continue helping him. He then proceeds to walk far, far away from the phone 4 more times, and every time I tell him not to. Then he says, "The keyboard is plugged in and still isn't working. Just come down here and fix everything." This is ridiculous. "Yeah, you got that right. Can you send me another picture?" I ask. I then receive the picture of his desktop, and I immediately see a pattern. A real modus operandi. This man has taken the keyboard's USB plug, and jammed it into a display port, and while he claimed it was plugged in, you can clearly see the plug is 3/4 of the way out of the port and at an extreme angle. While I'm explaining this, he begins yelling at someone else, "We're not open yet." I stop and listen. Silence. Then he tells me, "I have to go, there's a gas leak. The fire station is here." I just kind of stare at the phone for a beat. He then yells at me, "And send someone down here." Click. At this point I'm reaching that glorious state of mind beyond anger and frustration which leads into hysterical incredulity. If there really was a gas leak, I later found out there wasn't. Luckily this new model of UPS doesn't require plugging in a cable that could potentially spark. I begin to wonder if he somehow hit a valve or pipe or something, but nothing came of this peripheral situation. Just another super fun speed bump, so at this point I steady myself, and begin the process of emailing my supervisors with all the details. I show them the pictures he sent me of the botched battery job and the keyboard, and my supervisors say, "How the hell did he manage that?" True to corporate fashion, a decision on resolving this matter wasn't reached until that afternoon. At first, they wanted me to drive over the same day. After all, I wouldn't have gotten home until much later in the evening, well beyond my normal hours. I would have done it if they asked. I wanted to see this senior user in person after all, but at the same time I didn't want to cave to his demands of forcing me to drive over for something so stupid. What ended up happening was that one of my supers said they were headed that way for business the next day and could stop at the location to set the unit up themselves. Instead of that senior user being there, my super was let in by the MIA location manager. The one who was terrified of technology. My super told him what happened with the senior user. The location manager says, "Yeah, he gets like that." "He gets like that? And you thought it was a good idea to have him in charge of this? Shoot, you thought it was a good idea to put someone like that in a senior position? Interesting." My super was able to remove the stuck battery in less than a minute, and proceeds to show the location manager how to install the UPS. The location manager stares blankly for a moment and says, "Oh, that was all? I could have done that."